It's 40,000 BC. It's the middle of the night, and somewhere in the dark, a baby is crying. There's no pediatrician. There's no 24-hour pharmacy. There's no group chat where your mom tells you the baby's fine. It's just gas. There's just you, a fire that's slowly dying, a cold that wants in, and a tiny, fragile human who cannot walk, cannot talk, cannot feed itself, and cannot do a single thing to keep itself alive. And here's the part that should genuinely stop you. That baby probably had less than a 50% chance of reaching its 5th birthday. For most of human history, roughly 1 in 2 children died before they grew up. Sit with that number because it shaped everything about how our ancestors lived, loved, and organized their entire world. This is the story of how ancient humans kept their children alive. Not with medicine, not with technology, with something older, stranger, and honestly more impressive than any of that. Let's start with the problem, because the problem was enormous. A human baby is a disaster. Compared to almost any other animal, we are born absurdly early and absurdly helpless. A baby deer stands up and walks within an hour. A baby horse can run the same day. A human baby, after 9 months, arrives unable to support its own head. Why? Blame 2 things working against each other. We walk upright, which narrowed the human pelvis. And we have enormous brains, which need a big skull. A fully developed human brain simply cannot fit through the birth canal. So evolution made a deal. Babies come out early, underbaked, with skulls still soft and unfused, and finish developing on the outside, which is great for fitting through the hips. It is terrible for survival. It means a human child needs years of constant, exhausting, around-the-clock care just to not die. And ancient parents somehow pulled that off over and over for hundreds of thousands of years without any of the things we consider basic today. So how? Let's talk about the first and most important answer. It wasn't the mother. It was everyone. Here's something modern parents desperately need to hear. For almost all of human history, raising a child was never a 2-person job. The idea of a mom and dad alone in a house with a baby is a bizarre modern experiment, and frankly, it's failing a lot of people. Ancient humans raised children cooperatively. Anthropologists call it alloparenting. Everyone parents. In a typical foraging band, a baby was passed around constantly. Aunts, older siblings, cousins, unrelated adults, all of them held, carried, and watched the child. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups show infants being handled by dozens of different people in their first weeks of life. The mother got to rest. She got to eat. She got to actually recover from giving birth, instead of doing it all alone on 3 hours of sleep. And this is where one of the most beautiful ideas in all of anthropology comes in. The grandmother hypothesis. Here's the puzzle. Human women are one of the only species on Earth that live for decades after they can no longer reproduce. From a cold evolutionary standpoint, that makes no sense. If the goal is passing on genes, why keep an individual alive long after they stop having babies? The answer is grandmothers. A grandmother who can't have more children of her own can do something almost as powerful. She can keep her grandchildren alive. She gathers food, she shares knowledge, she watches the little ones while the parents work. And in a world where half of all children die, an extra experienced adult dramatically tips the odds. Researchers studying historical populations found that the presence of a living grandmother measurably increased a child's chance of survival. Think about what that means. Menopause might exist because grandmothers kept the species alive. Your great-great-great-grandmother, many times over, may have survived to old age specifically because old women were a survival superpower. That's not a small thing. That's one of the deepest secrets of how we made it. Now let's talk about food, because feeding a baby is harder than it sounds. For the first chunk of life, the answer was breastfeeding, and ancient mothers breastfed far longer than we do now, often for 2, 3, even 4 years. This wasn't just nutrition. Extended breastfeeding suppresses fertility, naturally spacing out births, so a mother wasn't overwhelmed with multiple helpless infants at once. It was, in effect, the original birth control, the body managing its own workload. But eventually, a child has to eat real food, and this was a genuine danger zone. The moment of weaning, switching a baby off breast milk and onto whatever the group ate, was one of the deadliest periods of childhood. New foods meant new bacteria, contaminated water, parasites, and a still developing immune system getting hit from every direction. Skeletons from ancient sites often show signs of stress and malnutrition, lining up almost exactly with the age of weaning. So mothers got clever. They pre-chewed food to soften it for toothless infants. They made early gruels from ground grains and water. They learned through brutal trial and error. which foods a small child could handle, and which ones would kill it. Knowledge that was never written down, just passed from mother to daughter, generation after generation, around the same dying fires. Then there's the simplest enemy of all, cold. A small body loses heat fast, and a baby can't shiver effectively or regulate its own temperature in the early weeks. So ancient humans did the obvious thing. They held them, skin to skin, day and night. Modern hospitals have actually rediscovered this. It's called kangaroo care, and it measurably improves survival for premature infants. We invented incubators, ran the numbers, and concluded that a warm parent holding a baby against their chest is one of the best technologies we have. Our ancestors knew that without a single study. They also wrapped them. Swaddling, binding a baby snugly in cloth or hide, shows up across countless ancient cultures. It kept the infant warm, kept it calm, and kept it from wriggling toward a fire or off a ledge while the adults worked. Some groups used cradle boards, strapping the baby to a portable frame the mother could carry on her back or prop safely nearby. A car seat, basically 10,000 years early. But here's where the story turns, and it turns dark. For all their ingenuity, ancient parents lost children constantly, and living with that much death changed how people thought about children entirely. In many ancient cultures, a newborn wasn't fully considered a person yet, not out of cruelty, but out of self-protection. When so many infants died in the first days and weeks, naming a child, celebrating it, fully bonding with it, was sometimes delayed until it survived a dangerous early window. In parts of the ancient and even early modern world, babies weren't named for days, sometimes longer, until they'd proven they were likely to live. Imagine the emotional armor required to hold your own child and not let yourself fully love it yet because you'd already buried others. And when medicine failed, which was almost always, people turned to the unseen. Across nearly every ancient culture, children were protected by ritual, amulets to ward off illness, charms against the evil eye, prayers to specific gods of childbirth and infancy. The Romans had deities assigned to nearly every stage of a child's early life, gods for the first cry, for nursing, for the first step. Egyptian households kept protective figures aimed squarely at keeping mothers and infants safe. It's easy to look at that and call it superstition. But look closer and you see something else. You see terrified parents doing absolutely everything within their power, including the things that couldn't possibly work, because the alternative was doing nothing while your child slipped away. That's not ignorance. That's love with nowhere else to go. So here's the truth at the center of all this. Ancient humans kept their children alive through sheer, relentless, collective effort, not with medicine, but with each other. The mother and the grandmother and the aunt and the older sibling and the whole band, all of them pouring years of labor into a creature that might still die anyway. And against everything, enough of them survived. Every single person alive today is the end of an unbroken chain stretching back hundreds of thousands of years of children who made it, not because survival was likely, but because someone, usually many someones, refused to let go. Every ancestor you've ever had was once a helpless, screaming infant that somebody stayed up all night holding by a fire. That's the part that gets me. We talk about human history like it's kings and wars and empires, but underneath all of it, the real story, the one that actually had to succeed for any of the rest to happen, is quieter. It's a tired adult in the dark, keeping a small, fragile life warm for one more night, and then another, for 100,000 years. So the next time you hear a baby crying, or you're the exhausted one up at 3 a.m., wondering if you're doing any of this right, understand what you're part of. You are doing the oldest, hardest, most important job our species has ever had, the one that everything else was built on top of. They kept their children alive, and here you are, so they must have done something right.